It's 7:15 p.m. Pacific time on Monday, July 6th, so just bear that in mind as I'm discussing a breaking story. So I put out a video a couple hours ago about Graham Platner and the allegations that have come out against him that he assaulted a former girlfriend in 2021. And we've seen Ro Khanna and Ruben Gallego withdraw their endorsements of him. We've seen Hassan Piker distance himself. We've seen multiple people come out in condemnation of Platner, and I believe Maine Democrats have said that he should pull himself from the race. And I understand this is all breaking, it's all very new, and there's a lot that we don't know, but it does appear that there's quite a bit of corroborating evidence. And I just want to address something really quickly here, because I had a lot of people in my comments across multiple social media platforms who were like, why now? Why did she wait until now to come out with this very damning evidence so late in the race after the Democratic primary? What's the issue with this timing? It feels really sus. And I guess I have some thoughts about this, because I think people are viewing this in a really binary way that I'm not sure is helpful. So, or accurate, right? So folks are either saying, well, this is a setup and it's meant to take him down when he's ahead in the polls. And Susan Collins supported Brett Kavanaugh, also accused of sexual assault. Susan Collins supports Donald Trump, a man found liable for sexual assault, and said that you can grab women by the kitty cat, right? So Susan Collins is her own special kind of awful, a woman who supports sexual abusers because it is politically advantageous for her. So let's not in any way try to fool ourselves into thinking that Susan Collins is a decent person because she's a woman. Absolutely not. But this story breaking at this moment in time, after the Democratic primary, after Graham Platner secured the nomination, that is really beneficial for Collins, right? And so I understand why that seems suspicious. In a close race when Platner was likely, and he hasn't dropped out yet, so by the time this publishes, he may have dropped out, I don't know. But as of right now, he said about 4 hours ago, he and his campaign were taking a break to evaluate the situation. But the Democratic majority in the Senate is on the line. Democracy is on the line. The ability for Congress to constrain, to stop Donald Trump's rollout of fascism it's on the fucking line. It's on the line. The stakes could not be any higher. And I know I lost my shit earlier when I saw some guys on Facebook who were like, I don't care what Platner did, I'm going to vote for him because the other option is Susan Collins. And the other option is that Republicans likely maintain control of the Senate. And I was like, men will throw women under the bus perennially, forever, in the name of their leftist or like Democratic centrist politics. Women are always thrown under the bus. This is why we saw Democratic establishment politicians like Bill Clinton, like Chuck Schumer, endorsing serial sex pest Andrew Cuomo in the New York mayoral primary race. Because these guys don't care about women. They don't care about our safety, our agency, our humanity, our well-being, our lives. And I feel like we as women have to learn that lesson over and over and over again. There are so few men who are actually safe for women. There are so few men who have actually deconstructed from the patriarchy. But I think there's this other layer to it, which is like, if you were a dude and you knew you did some shit that you shouldn't have, if you knew that you violated a woman's consent, or you knew there was even a situation where like it could potentially be a scandal, and democracy was on the line, that we are falling into fascism and the stakes could not be any higher, why would you run for office? Why would you risk the future of democracy on your deeply flawed, scandal-ridden campaign? You had to know this shit was going to come out sooner or later. Eric Swalwell, you had to know this shit was going to come out sooner or later. Graham Platner, you didn't know, your team didn't know that this was going to come out at a time that imperils an entire nation. I get that somebody running for elected office at that level, the Senate of the United States, you have to have a massive fucking ego to run for that office. Other than maybe like my Senator Jeff Merkley, most people who run for Senate are very confident in themselves. They feel that they deserve this position. Maybe they think they can do some good. Maybe Platner thought he was going to do penance for all of his past harms and try and right some wrongs. But also, I think these men feel entitled. They feel that their shit won't catch up to them. They feel that what they have done in the past is just like a little blip to them. I think they often don't anticipate that these scandals will come and catch them, because to them it wasn't that consequential. It often destroys women's lives. It traumatizes. Women have to live with it on a daily basis, but I think for a lot of these men, it was just a blip for them. They probably don't think it's that big of a deal. Again, at this point in time, we don't know, right? There are allegations and there is some evidence. I don't want to make it sound like he's been convicted in a court of law. It's early days yet, and we don't know a lot. But we do know that he's considering dropping out of the race. We do know he is being pressured. It was a swift, instantaneous movement from all over to pressure him to drop out. And so that then brings it back around to all the people in my comments who are like, this seems really suspicious. The timing benefits Susan Collins. This is really suspicious. I believe that this was trumped up. This is what people are saying. And I want to, again, gently push back and say multiple things can be true at once. Somebody can have been a victim. And also, the people who get access to that woman's story can hold it back, can use it at a strategic moment for maximum political impact. And I know it feels terrible, but like, it's yet another way that we as women are used in the political games of the system, of the parties, of the men who run those parties. The timing of this is not coincidental. This could have come out at any point in the past couple of months. It could have come out very early in Platner's race and scuttled him. It could have come out before the Democratic primary, but it didn't. It came out afterward. Not that 80-year-old AIPAC Democrat Janet Mills was going to be a great pick, but she would have been better than Susan Collins. I would argue, though, that a lot of establishment Democrats actually really like Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins being like moderate Republicans. They're very useful to establishment Democrats because they can get those two women to vote with the Republicans when establishment Democrats don't really want a bill to pass, and they can be like, oh, we'll blame it on the Republicans. Just my own headcanon here. Murkowski and Collins are very, very useful to AIPAC establishment corporate Dems. So I do think that the timing of the release of this story is very political. It's very strategic. It's meant to cause maximum harm to the future of democracy. It's meant to help Republicans maintain their control. And I would argue it's meant to maybe help establishment Dems maintain their control because they like being in the minority. They like being that controlled opposition and forever dangling things in front of you that they don't ever fucking deliver. And they don't want candidates who will deliver on their promises. And they love a candidate like Graham Platner. Because look at how well positioned the establishment is to maintain their status quo in the wake of all of this. Who suffers? Who loses out in this scenario? It's the American people. It's the entire fucking world, Graham Platner. It's the entire fucking world, all of y'all who ran his campaign and had to know this shit was under the surface. Yeah, there is a woman at the center of this story who has been harmed, allegedly has been wronged, and deserves justice if these allegations are true. But whether or not they are true, it has derailed Platner's campaign. It has potentially cost Democrats the majority in the Senate. It has imperiled democracy in a really significant way. The arrogance, the hubris of men literally imperils democracy from both parties. We know the Republicans are like super down with exploiting women, super down with harming women. They have no problem electing PDF files and serial abusers, men who sexually assault women in department store dressing rooms. They're fine with all of that. It's crushing to be a woman in the United States, to have daughters in the United States and see how much it's always the bear. We always have to choose the bear. We can never fully extend trust to men. We can never count on them to do the right thing. We can never count on them to put their own egos aside. We can never count on them to put the safety and well-being of women, both personally in their personal relationships and on a systemic level, right? Because think of all of the legislation that is imperiled by all of this. Susan Collins is super fine with abortion bans. Susan Collins is glad she supported Brett Kavanaugh, who helped dismantle Roe v. Wade. Susan Collins and so many of these women are super fine with passing the SAVE Act and disenfranchising millions of women voters. Like, on a personal level and a systemic level, it's also fucked. We need to start nominating more women, more Daria Eliza Chevaliers, more women running for office, more Maylak Kiroses. And the rest of us, let's start supporting more women candidates, because maybe the future is a matriarchy.